The Bataan Death March referred to the harsh forced march of prisoners of war during the Japanese Army's offensive operations in the Philippines, particularly notorious for its brutality. This grueling march, covering a distance of approximately 100 kilometers, took place under scorching conditions, resulting in numerous casualties among both civilians and prisoners who were already suffering from extreme hunger. The Bataan Death March stands as one of the war crimes committed by the Japanese military, leaving a stain on history. However, when it comes to the true facts of the modern Bataan March, many people have misconceptions due to the influence of post-war propaganda from the victorious nations. The narrative that Japanese soldiers who were in charge of transporting and overseeing the prisoners cruelly and inhumanely abused both prisoners of war and refugees, resulting in the death of many during the transfer from Mariveles to San Fernando, contains many inaccuracies. In reality, during the march, many perished from exhaustion, starvation, and illness, with an uncountable number of casualties. Furthermore, some units carried out the massacre of prisoners based on false orders issued by the Imperial General Headquarters staff. This condemnable act should rightfully be criticized. It is important to note that the march itself was entirely a failure on the part of the Japanese military, due to the inadequate planning and foresight in the operational strategy. Bataan operation numbered approximately 30,000 troops. Due to the unexpectedly fierce resistance of the Allied forces and the formidable resistance on the Bataan Peninsula, the Japanese army found themselves requiring an increased number of troops and supplies. However, without established naval supremacy and lacking naval support, maritime transportation of supplies was not viable. Therefore, land-based transport of supplies became necessary. Unfortunately, the Bataan Peninsula was covered by dense jungle, hindering the smooth flow of supplies. This led to a critical shortage of food and resources, with soldiers and prisoners alike teetering on the brink of starvation. The Japanese army at the time did not have an accurate assessment of the American forces in Bataan. Initially, they estimated the Allied forces to be around 25,000. However, as the Japanese successfully captured the Bataan Peninsula, a large number of Allied soldiers began surrendering to Japanese units one after another. This included over 52,000 Allied soldiers, more than 9,000 American soldiers, and an additional 16,000 hospitalized American soldiers. In total, this amounted to nearly 63,000 individuals. In addition, when considering the local residents who had become refugees, the total population swelled to around 120,000. When combined with the number of Japanese soldiers and Allied soldiers, even with a conservative estimate, the total exceeded 150,000 individuals. Upon the occupation of the Bataan Peninsula, the Japanese army found themselves burdened with the immense responsibility of providing for and protecting this population. However, the 14th Army was entirely unprepared for starvation. During the march, the 14th Army became responsible for providing meals to the prisoners, yet with minimal supplies. Even Japanese soldiers who had fought violently on Bataan were near starvation. Soldiers distributed their limited rations to the prisoners, distributing morsels of portable rations little by little to refugees. They shared cigarettes and gave sips of water from their canteens. The soldiers themselves were left empty-handed. During the march, many Japanese soldiers, though not wounded or sick, collapsed from exhaustion due to lack of food, and there were numerous cases where they had even less to eat than the prisoners or refugees. Given their circumstances, it was an impossible feat for them to satisfy the needs of this vast group of 150,000 people. Even if every one of the 30,000 Japanese soldiers had willingly fasted to the point of death, it would not have been sufficient. The Geneva Conventions provide detailed provisions regarding the treatment of prisoners of war, requiring considerations for their health, and prohibiting torture and inhumane treatment. When strictly adhering to the treatment prescribed in the Geneva Conventions, victorious nations will be burdened with the responsibility of adequately providing food, transportation, and humanitarian care for prisoners, refugees, and other affected individuals. Considering these facts, if a victorious nation were to strictly adhere to the provisions of the Geneva Conventions regarding the treatment of prisoners of war, they would need to achieve a resounding victory over the enemy nation, with minimal to no harm suffered on their own side. And additionally, it would assume the presence of an ample supply of resources in the rear. However, the Imperial General Headquarters had not anticipated nor prepared for these aspects of post-victory governance. This lack of foresight and planning ultimately led to strategic failure despite a military victory. General Yamashita Tomoyuki, after successfully capturing Singapore, is said to have uttered the words, "The most challenging part of war is what comes after victory." Furthermore, Tokugawa Ieyasu left a warning against an excessive fixation on winning, stating, "If one only knows how to win, and is ignorant of ruling, it will lead to one's own ruin." These words caution that an obsession with winning can sometimes lead to disastrous consequences for the overall strategic situation. Despite the existence of such things, complacency towards victory and an excessive fixation on triumph undermined post-victory governance. As the assault on Bataan commenced, the tide of the battle began to turn in favor of the Japanese forces. The soldiers of the Japanese army, united with an unwavering resolve for victory, advanced with a determination that brooked no surrender. At that moment, they were completely unaware of this fact. In fact, not even the Imperial General Headquarters had contemplated the strategy and action plans in the event of victory. It was here that later on, despite winning the war, the root of strategic defeat lay. In essence, the senior staff at the Imperial General Headquarters during that time lacked a comprehensive understanding of war strategy. They were not much different from, or even less than attuned to, the strategic thinking of the commanders in the fields. And in some cases, they failed to grasp the realities of the battlefields. This is the reason why Japanese soldiers were skilled for their excellence, while the staff officers were criticized for their inadequacies.